So how do you help a person that is so capable and either from guilt or programming or their expectation or whatever reason? I've got to admit, I've worked with thousands that get to that level, and all their top leaders would say, what can I do to help them unlock to the next level? How do you help them do that?
This is a great question. I would say their internal story or standard was met, right? So they was met, which is why they got the result they wanted. So the internal
or pardon me for interrupting, or some of them are out earning their spouse. If they go any farther.
Well, so let me, because this the whole framework
that's going to create a whole thing.
So there's this intrinsic motivation that is diminished, and I really like using the 6 human needs psychology framework to understand this. But their particular psychological needs are met, and once they're met, it's diminished. So their motivation to do the thing they were doing is diminished, right? And there's lots of reasons for this. Going back to the premise, this is one of my organizing principles, is we always do what we value most. It helps understand human behavior. So it's like, we may look at it like, well, what's more important than making 6 digits? What's more important than making 7 figures? Well, that's the question. What is more important to them? Because there are other things that are more important.
Welcome to the Excellence Project. My name is Eric Worre, and today we have Sabastian Enges. He is a person that specializes, successful entrepreneur, but specializes in helping people get out of their own way, how to have a mental breakthrough. So the title that you're going to hear about with this episode is how to unf yourself. And sorry for the colorful language, but I think it's appropriate. I think we do that to ourselves all the time. And if we can unf ourselves, get out of our own way, we can have tremendous success. Okay. I think you're going to love this conversation. I know I did. Let's jump into my conversation with Sabastian Enges. Sabastian Enges, how are you?
Fantastic.
We're just meeting for the first time, and we should have had the cameras turned on ever since you walked into the house and we started having this conversation. But welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
I'm glad that you're here. This happened kind of randomly.
Yep.
You and some other speakers were in town for a big conference.
Yep.
And I asked one of them, and it's like, who should I talk to? If they're available, they come over and have a conversation. And they didn't hesitate. They said Sabastian Enges. So I'm glad that you're here. And in our previous conversation, the reason why I think this is interesting is, what is the working title for your book?
Working title is The Identity Gap.
The Identity Gap.
Yep.
And when we were discussing it, what's the real message?
How to unf yourself. Yeah.
How to unf yourself. And that's what I want this conversation to be about.
I love it.
How to raise your awareness, find out how you've been damaging yourself or perpetuating problems, repeating patterns, strengthening your limiting beliefs, all these different things, and get yourself to the other side.
Yeah.
Right. And I know it's a little bit racy language, but I can't think of a more appropriate way to say it than how to unf yourself. So how do people get to this? How do people f themselves? How do they do it?
Well, that's a great question. I think most of our programming is pretty well baked by the time we're 7, right? And before the age of 7, we're in theta state mostly, which is in a super absorptive state. So we're just absorbing everything in our environment, and we're largely unconscious. So by the time we get through that age, our programming is well baked. So depending on the environment you grew up in, what you experienced, you've already made assumptions about your world. You already told yourself stories about your world. You're already creating a world to try to make sense of what you've experienced with your parents, right? Which most people, when they go back and want to talk about why they believe what they do, they go back to their parents or how they were raised. But we don't take the time to evaluate whether or not it's accurate more often than not. And so that's where we begin. I've heard it said many times, but we're willing to challenge anything we hold to be true, except for those things we hold most true. Those we don't challenge at all. And I feel like that's very, very true. I see that over and over again in people's lives.
Give me some examples.
Anytime you see global belief systems, all people are like this. Rich people are greedy. Poor people are needy. Nobody forgives anyone. Anytime you see global belief systems, that's generally an indication of a program that is through life experience that has become fully baked into the psyche of the individual, that they're not questioning whether or not that's true or not, whether it's accurate or not. And they don't realize their worldview is being shaped by that belief. So when they walk out into the world and they see things, their stories that inform their worldview are based on these beliefs that they're not even conscious of. So global belief systems is an easy place to start. So anytime I listen to people use never, always, everyone, no one, that's
even about themselves.
Even about themselves.
Because the way I say it sometimes is don't believe everything you believe.
Yeah.
Because if you look back at your life, the things that you believe to be 100% true, now you have a different belief system about that thing, and it's somehow that magically changed. So what are you thinking about now?
Right.
That is going to be proven to be inaccurate at some point in the future or not serving you?
Not serving you is a big one. And I love that you brought that up. So for me, I think we have to operate with a modicum of humility that we're going to do the best we can with the information we have, but be willing to change your mind. I think the intelligence of the future, or the learned of the future, will be those who have learned how to unlearn and relearn. And that's a skill that's getting seemingly harder and harder to find in people, right? It gets crystallized, and then we hold on to that which we believe, which is why my whole book is on identity, because our identity crystallizes us into a story about ourselves in the world, and it informs our entire experience. And if we don't challenge it, if we don't question that, we're basically on repeat. And I see this in my coaching practice, how many people are living out the same day over and over again, because most people are having the same thoughts every day, right? 90% of their thoughts. Yeah. Groundhog Day. It's not unique thoughts. It's the same thoughts over and over and over again. You're just reliving the patterns of thought, patterns of behavior. So the whole goal then, to me, is to wake up, where you're no longer living from those patterned belief systems, or at least if you are, you did it from a conscious place. Because I think it is useful. Your unconscious will help you become more energy efficient with your belief system. So if you consciously bring something in, go, this is what I want to believe, and then you embed it in your unconscious, that's useful, right? Because it doesn't take any energy to do it, and you'll begin to constantly manifest that in your environment. The key is to become conscious of those things. And most people don't ever get there. So their belief systems are from 10, 20, 30 years ago, and they've never evaluated, is this true? Is this real? Is this accurate? Do I want to continue to show up this way in the world? Third-hand offenses are the ones that I feel like you run into a lot. I'll give you another example. Let's say you grew up in a home where you were taught that men can't be trusted. I have 2 clients right now that have similar stories around this. Well, I'll ask them, well, did you have any experiences with men not being able to be trusted? And they say, well, not when I was younger. I'm like, well, what happened there? Well, my grandma was married to an abusive alcoholic. And my mom saw that environment, and she made the judgment, men can't be trusted, right? So then she passes this on to, this is what her discovery was. Like, this was passed on to her, not through her experience, but through somebody else's experience. Sure. And it was never challenged. So now she's got this operating belief that men can't be trusted. People
could do that about men, women, race,
anything. I'm just using a real example, but yeah, 100%. This goes in so many different ways. And we don't think to challenge whether it's true. And then it's showing up in our world and causing us a lot of pain in our relationships. And we're confused why our relationships aren't working out, or why we seem to suffer the same kind of patterns in relationship, right? And there's just no awareness. So if we can't solve for us, then we're constantly at the effects of life. And that's how we're looking at it. Life is happening to me.
Unlearn and relearn.
Right.
But before unlearn and relearn, you have to be aware.
Yeah.
That something needs to be unlearned
and
relearned.
Yes.
And for me, one of the ways, and you're an expert at this, I'm an amateur, okay? I've been around personal development a long time. I'm still working on myself. I'm a work in progress. And I'm still trying to unlearn
Aren't
things.
we all?
I'm trying to be as aware as possible.
Yes.
And be truthful with myself about what I need to unlearn and what I need to relearn. because I'm a good negotiator with myself, and I'm a good rationalizer, and I'm a good justifier, and I'm good at arguing for my limiting beliefs.
Yes.
So awareness leading to unlearn, then to relearn. But one of the ways I think to can raise awareness is, and you mentioned the word a second ago, so I want to talk about it, repeating patterns.
Yeah.
There's a repeating pattern in your life that is actually a signal.
Yes.
Saying warning, 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 or it's not emotional at all.
Yep.
It's just, T. Harv Eker wrote about it in Secrets of the Millionaire Mind. If you type something into a word processor and you misspell a word, and then you push print, it's going to print out that misspelled word. You can say, well, that wasn't right. You go back to your computer, you push print again.
Yep.
It's going to keep
It's a beautiful example.
coming back over and
Yep.
over and over. You have to just change the word.
Yep.
So that's an example of a repeating pattern. This typo keeps happening to me.
Yes.
Okay. So this could come into play in destructive behavior, sabotage, relationships. Guys keep cheating on me,
Yep.
or, people are always lying to me. Nobody ever tells me the truth.
All global belief systems. Yep.
Yeah. Rich people are assholes. Just watch Titanic. They're all assholes. The most anti-prosperity movie ever made. The poor people are the only happy ones. And all the rich people are assholes. All of those different things, if you make money and you never have any, repeating pattern.
Yes. There's never enough.
If you could pay your bills, but you don't, or you don't pay your taxes or whatever, you just decide to be undisciplined, that's a repeating pattern.
Yes.
To create some drama. Or you're a last minute person, you're a procrastinator, you're late all the time.
Yep.
That's a repeating pattern. All these different repeating patterns. Some people just say, well, that's just the way I am.
That's just who I am.
That's who I am.
Right.
And others say at some point, and I'm interested in that point, at some point they say, maybe this is a signal.
Yep.
Maybe I shouldn't just push print.
Yep.
Maybe I need to go back and look at and just change a couple letters and then push print again, see if I get a different outcome.
Yep.
So talk to me about the process of looking at repeating patterns, raising your awareness so you can begin this process of having a better life.
Yeah. So this is the heart of my work. So there was a big study that was just done that released 85% of the population is not self-aware. They're not solving for themselves. Everything is in their environment. And we would say from a consciousness standpoint, they look at life like I'm at the effects of life. Life is happening to me. They have no way to solve for themselves. And this is where everything starts. And when we talk about awareness, the frame I would use is anywhere in your life, which is what you're explaining, that you continue to get an unintended consequence. We could say negative or positive, but normally people look at the negative ones. Anywhere you continue to get a negative unintended consequence, you lack awareness. It's happening unconsciously. I'm not trying to continue to create this, but it continues to happen. And you're exactly right. What ends up happening is people will tell them the story of themselves, and their story or their identity goes, well, this is just who I am. This is just my personality. This is just how I was raised. By the way, those are all statements for me in the book. I talk about these are all triggers that can provoke.
Is this book out?
No, not yet. Hopefully it'll be up at the end of the year.
So what's your working title?
The identity gap.
The identity gap. I want everybody to put into the comments, what's the better title? The identity gap or how to yourself? Please put in the comments which one you think that you would buy more. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that. It'll be good.
It'll
Good market
be
test for
interesting
me.
feedback.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, go ahead.
So anywhere you're getting an unintended consequence, you're in a repeating behavior and you're at the effects of life. And I look at it like the fly hitting the window, right? It's like this time it's going to open. This time it's going to open. Just keep it in the window. Well, go look in your window. There's a bunch of dead flies. They eventually just die there because they don't know how to solve for themselves. They don't understand how how they're showing up is having an effect on their world. Because most people don't see it that way. They think the world is having an effect on them and they don't know how to solve for themselves. So this is what I'm really passionate about, is 85% of the population doesn't know how to solve for themselves. And we use these expressions like, well, that's just the way I was raised. That's how I was taught. That's what my parents taught me. That's what my teacher taught me. That's how we do it in my country. That's how we do it in my culture, which I'm not saying those things are inherently wrong, but if we don't take the time to evaluate whether they're inherently right, they may very well be not serving us. Right? So I firmly believe that wealth, as an example, isn't a possession. It is a mindset. It is how you look at your world. It's an education, right? And the transfer of wealth happens through education, through mentality. And we see that when you look at wealthy people who don't do a good job at teaching the next generation how to manage wealth, it is lost because it isn't a possession. It is a mindset. So if you grew up with a poor mindset and you grew up around people with a poor mindset, it would be easy to think, well, that's just my lot in life. That's how it is in my country. That's how it is in my family. That is how it is in my town, without realizing that that could be shifted. You just have to upgrade what you're talking about as your program. And I use a very similar example to the printer, but I say, if we had a calculator and we put 5 plus 5 in the calculator and it came out 11, is the calculator wrong? And of course, immediately everyone goes, of course it is, right? It should be 10, not 11. I go, no, the calculator's not wrong. The program's wrong. Right. And that's like our brain. We have programs in our brain. The program is only going to do what it was programmed to do. Right. That's all it can do.
Interesting.
And that's how your brain works. It's only going to do what it was programmed to do. So if you want to get a different result, you need to use a different program and you need to upgrade your programming. So that's a lot of self-awareness. This is coming in and going, well, is there another way to look at this? Is this absolutely true? I like Byron's Katie work here. It's just 4 questions, 4 simple questions of the work. Is it true? Am I absolutely certain it's true? How does it make me feel believing this is true? How would I be if this wasn't true? Right? It's like, wow. It's just the crack of light to go, hey, maybe there's a different...
Who has these 4 questions?
It's called The Work by Byron Katie.
Byron Katie?
Yeah, and it's fantastic. It's 4 questions. She probably turned it into a book. I just know it as the 4 questions, The Work. But it's brilliant because you can get people to reframe things quickly. So it's 4 questions, and the first 2 questions are literally the same question twice, just to get people to get it, right? Like, is this true? And if somebody's emotionally triggered, so, example, let's say, my husband just thinks I'm a maid because he doesn't clean up. He never puts his dishes away. Okay. Super emotional about it. Is this true? Yes, of course it's true. Are you absolutely certain it's true? There's no other reason why? Well, maybe there's another reason. So the whole crack of light is like, well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it isn't true. Yeah. Right. And that's
get past the knee-jerk reaction.
Right. And to get past the idea that, well, maybe my belief system isn't accurate. Mm-hmm. So you need 2 questions just to get people to go, well, maybe it isn't true. Right? Okay. Well, how does it make you feel believing this is true? Well, that my husband thinks I'm his maid, his servant. She's like, shitty. Like I'm not his equal. Like he doesn't care about me. Like, wow, that sounds really horrible. That's not a fun way. No, I don't want to live that way. Well, what would it be if that wasn't true? Oh my God, I'd love my husband so much more. I'd feel so much closer to him and be so much more. Your whole thing started with a belief system, an assumption that may not even be accurate, that you're not even aware of, that you're choosing. That's creating a whole story and impacting your relationship with your husband. When if you just did the conscious work, you're like, well, maybe this isn't true. It could shift your whole story about your relationship with your husband as a kind of tongue-in-cheek example.
Yeah, I mean, or you were raised a certain way that bath time for your kids was going to be this way.
Yeah,
and then you have your spouse do it, and they don't do it that way, and it makes you crazy.
Right. I mean, you have a story about why that is. Yeah. Right.
But they didn't do it right. Quote unquote, because that was how you were taught from somebody else. The one thing about right and wrong, I don't know where I learned this, but I've used it well, because everybody's real, especially in today's society, we're so polarized about right and wrong. Yep. And I had an interesting conversation with Tom Bilyeu about polarization, specifically in the United States. Yep. And I said, why is it, this is a side note, why is it that we're basically for my whole lifetime, we've been 50-50. 51-49. Yep. How's it even possible with 350 million people, whatever? He says it's the best thing in the world. Because that polarization, that friction is what causes tyranny not to get out of hand. Imagine if one party had 75%.
100%.
They would destroy. Yep. They would literally want to kill the other 25%. I said the reason why Hitler came in to power is there's like 20 different parties that were running. He only needed 15% in order to be able. He would have never got 50%.
Yep.
In order to be able to run Germany. So like, So, side note on polarization and right and wrong, and everybody's so righteous. They're righteous about guns. They're righteous about abortion. They're righteous about immigration.
Whatever their
They're
belief
righteous.
systems.
They're repeating whatever's told to them.
Yep.
I think the best way to judge right and wrong in your life and in the world is by consequences.
Yep.
That's how you can judge.
Yep.
It's
Weird. What a novel idea.
what was the result, or what is the ongoing result of this action?
Yes.
There are consequences, many times unintended consequences, but there are consequences that lead people or that end up happening, and a lot of damage sometimes is caused because of those. Oops, I thought we were, people have a lot of opinions about vaccination or non-vaccination. And now the debate's coming back up again. And, they're right, wrong. Are there UFOs? Are there not?
Yep.
Everything in the world. There's no such thing as conspiracy theories. Everybody's like, they find their whole identity in how right they are.
Yep.
And that's this other person told me, they gave me some more evidence that proves that I'm even more right. We're living in kind of like this spectator sport reality right now, where a lot of people are being played, in my opinion, to think that they're in the game by just parroting somebody else's opinion.
Yep. That is the human tendency.
Versus being in the game.
Yeah.
The people who are like, you're really against that. Well, then you should run for office.
Yep.
Well, I don't have time for run for office. Well, you think your post on social media is moving the needle in any direction? Take somebody who's pro-abortion, somebody who is anti-abortion. Let post all you want. See if you're going to change any minds between those two. Not happening.
Nope.
So what is the point? Pick your battles, but whatever your battles are going to be, then do it. But most of us are getting played because everybody's just trying to get our attention and rile us up and keep us less productive than we would have been, or less thinking, less aware.
That's the unlearning and learning and relearning, is becoming better at critical thinking, which seems to be very lost in our society currently. The ability to think deeply and critically about issues, to think deeply and critically about the world, and to seek as your guiding light. And this is a challenging comment to make, I think, but truth, to seek truth first, not a party first, right? Don't be loyal to a party, be loyal to truth. And I agree. Every 4th of July, or almost every 4th of July, I read George Washington's farewell address, which I think is beautiful. It's an essay. You can find it online, but it was really powerful as he stepped down from office, right? He didn't have to. They wanted him to stay in office, and he believed in the two-term system, or the term system at the time. And he stepped down and he wrote essentially a warning about the pitfalls of the U.S. and what we were going to have to do to get through those, and the challenges that would come with it. And anybody who's loves our country, I highly recommend you read it, because it's prophetic. It's incredible what he saw.
We'll put a link in the notes.
It's incredible. But you're seeing we're living it today, and the bipartisan system was designed to keep the truth in the middle, so that not one party ever got too far out. And I look at right and wrong at this season of my life much differently. The question I ask, and it comes from Paul in Corinthians, he says, all things are lawful, because we move from the dispensation of law, dispensation of grace. All things are lawful, not all things are beneficial. And it was a reframe that allows for the illusion of duality. And that is, if human consciousness is ever going to rise, and that to me is what this is all about, we have to just surrender our story of duality. And so when you reframe to what is most beneficial, it's mostly what you're saying. It's like you're looking at the consequence of the decision, not an opinion or a feeling or an emotion. It's like, is this the most beneficial decision I can make? And you can back test the logic, right? So for those who are Christian or follow some version of the Bible, thou shalt not kill, right? That's a commandment. Yet there are many times when God commanded people to die or to be killed. So how does that resolute itself? Well, because at that moment, that was the most beneficial decision given what they were working with, right? Which does not, it seems like a contradiction, but if you understand the higher frame, what is most beneficial, it changes how you make that decision, right? So as a practice, you can just try it on for size. Don't believe me, just try it on for size. When you go to make your decision, instead of saying, is this right or is this wrong? Ask, what is the most beneficial thing to do in this decision? And I would frame for the most people, right? As that's one of the, there's three illusions to surrender: the illusion of duality, the illusion of specialness or separation, and the illusion of control. Usually the control is the first.
You've got to walk me through those three.
Yeah, I will. So in the awakening, as people begin to awaken, there's usually three illusions that they surrender.
So you're assuming that people are sleepwalking, essentially.
85% of the population currently is, based on the last study.
They're repeating patterns over and over.
90% of their thoughts.
Very much like the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly.
They've been put in a loop.
Yep.
They've been put in a program. Or if you ever saw like the first season of Westworld.
Yep. Westworld's a beautiful example, but so is the Matrix.
They're in the loop. Oh, they're out of their loop. What's going on? They're supposed to be doing this right by now.
Yep. And I don't, for me, it's not, I don't think there's some crazy mastermind doing this. This is
I don't either.
This is just
human nature.
Human nature, right?
Yeah.
And that's,
we settled into our programming.
Our programming. And I think
it becomes familiar.
And as a design element, I think it is useful to sustain the species long enough to be able to ascend. So I can see from a design element why it would be that way. But the repeating behavior, at some point, as people wake up, it starts to break off. They start to awaken, or I would offer, remember who they always were, remember who they are, right? To remember, to come back to who you are. So usually
when you talked about, so good. And this is a fascinating subject for him. So, if I interrupt,
no, go.
Tell me to shut up, because I could go for a long time on this, because I've been in this world a long time and I have thoughts on it. We just don't have time to have meaningful conversations most of the time, because people want to know how to do the thing. Yep. How do I get that sale? How do I, make the whatever?
Yep.
And where this is the real work.
Yes. For me, it's how to think, not what to think.
Yeah.
And I'm not very interested in speaking too much on what to think. It's how to think, how to look at your world.
Yes.
Right. That's the high leverage activity, in my opinion.
Right. So inside of this structure where you are trying to wake up, trying to escape the matrix, trying to get out of the loop, right? Some people talk about being disillusioned as a bad thing. I reframed that myself. That's the release of illusions. That's the letting go of illusions.
And I would call that the void very often when people walk through the void, because you become untethered at that point.
Yes.
And that's scary for a lot of people, right? Because it's like, well, I don't think I believe this anymore, but I don't know what.
Disillusioned.
Yeah.
Disillusion is a good thing.
Yep.
To get rid of false illusions,
right,
and be able to face reality, even if reality is not what you hoped it would be at that moment. Fine. Because Jim Rohn used to say, instead of saying I'm rich, sometimes you need to say I'm broke.
Yep.
And now go fix it.
As an organizing principle, we must be real about where we're at while maintaining optimism about where we're going.
Right.
Right.
Right. So don't wallow in it.
Yep.
Say it, but
you got to be accurate. You have to, because you can't navigate if you don't have 2 points. You need to know where you're at and where you're going.
You take finances. How many people will not look at their net worth?
100%.
They will not acknowledge. They will not write it down.
It's like roulette with their checking account. They don't.
No. I don't even want to look at it.
Yep.
So being disillusioned is a good thing, because then you can face reality. So now these 3 things you need to give up.
Yeah. In order. And they usually go in this order, but you become untethered as you begin to question, right? And there's 7 steps to that. We can talk about that as another point. But the first one usually is surrendering the illusion of control. So how you get stuck, how you stay stuck, is being distracted. So my second book is probably going to be a lot about attention, because as long as your attention is out there and you're distracted out there, you're not aware of what's going on inside of you, right? Which is where all the work is. So surrendering the illusion of control is surrendering the idea that you can control and solve for the other human.
Right.
Right. Which is where most people spend most of their time.
Surrendering control over others.
Right. So then the question is, well, what can I control? And it's only one thing.
Yeah.
And that's where the crack of light comes in, because if, like, I do this illustration and I take people through, like, if we walked outside today and you got paid, tomorrow's Friday, so most people get paid on Friday. If we walked outside and we burnt 90% of that check, would you be pumped? And they're like, no, that'd be horrible. That's horrific. Like, well, I look at time, money, and energy as all the same resource held in different ways. Many people are doing that with their time and their energy. They are burning it on things that have no effect, that they can have no effect on. That is the illusion of control. It's keeping you focused out there, right? And this is, whether it's a mastermind or just human behavior, there are 3 ways to keep people stuck. 1, get them focused on things they can't control. That's number 1. And look at the news. The news is all about getting you to focus on things you can't control. That's going to keep you stuck. Number 2, get you to focus on the things you don't have. So now we're going to focus on control and we're going to focus on lack. And just think about the news. Backtest what I'm saying. Now you're all out there, and the solution is now out there. You're looking out there for it. And then the last one is, I need to make sure I get you stuck in the past or in the future. Right? Now I've taken all power from you. And it is not all like somebody else can do this. We do this to ourselves. We focus on things we can't control. We focus on things we don't have, and we focus on the past or we focus on the future, keeping ourselves powerless to change our lives. So taking back control is, I focus on the one thing I can control, myself. I focus on the things I do have, gratitude, and I get in the very real present moment. Now is all there is of time. Now is all there is of time. And all creation happens now.
Now,
so that's the first step.
Let me challenge one piece of that.
Yep.
If I don't think about the future, then if I'm only thinking about today, like people have this silly thing, like, if you only had 3 hours to live, one day would you live, what would you do? Well, you wouldn't be very productive.
Right.
You wouldn't be building anything.
Right. Probably not, depending on who you are, but probably not. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think having a vision
100%
for where you're going will cause you to do more of the correct activity during the day.
100%.
Is that part living in the future?
No. So I would describe it this way, and I'm glad that you're asking a clarification here. We learn from the past. We plan for the future. We live in today.
We live in today.
But you are absolutely
to go towards a
planning
better future.
Into the future. Yeah. But we have to live in today. What happens, and I'm sure you've seen this in your own work.
You don't want to live in a future that causes you not to take an action today.
Correct. And you'll see people do that where they get so obsessed with the future that they're miserable. They're miserable today. There's no effect today because it's always tomorrow. Right? So plan for the future, but live in the only moment that's real, which is today.
Right.
So that's your formula. If you want to take back your power, focus on things you can control. Focus on things you do have, and focus on the present moment, where you are now. What action can you take now? So pay attention to how media works, how people try to get your attention, how marketing works.
You're being programmed.
It's 100%. It's getting you to focus on things you can't control, focus on things you don't have, and it's either going to focus on the past or the future. And so step 1, take back control, surrender the illusion of control of others, is I can take back the one thing I can control, which is myself. That opens up the door for the next 2. Right, where everything begins to open up. But it could be a whole lifetime while somebody's working on that one.
And before we get to the next 2, I would just give you my hack.
Yeah, please.
On the first one is when I got first involved in network marketing, I had a lot of viruses in my brain, 3 in particular. One is I would rather get away with something than earn it. It was just more fun.
Yep.
I'd rather sneak onto the golf course than pay. I'd rather get into the back seat of a car and go to the drive-in or into the trunk of a car than pay or whatever.
For it.
You know what I mean? If somebody mislabeled something at a store and I got it for a discount and it was their fault, I was super happy about that. All that is silly stuff.
Yep.
But it was deeply ingrained. Another one is I wanted people to pay me first and then I'd work harder.
Yeah. That'll keep you stuck.
Yeah. Well, it's like, pay me. You're only paying me to do this, so I'm only going to do this. So I thought they were taking advantage of me if I did more work than I was getting paid for.
Yeah.
And the third thing is I was a professional blamer.
Yep.
I was world class.
Yep.
I could convince anybody of just about anything that wasn't my fault. And once I got involved in entrepreneurship, I realized the blame thing
doesn't serve you
at all.
Because you still have to pay the price.
I could, get a passing grade in school with the blame thing or whatever. I could survive, but I wasn't going to make any money.
Yeah, the real world doesn't care.
Real world does not care. So I found for me that in my programming, it's like a 1 or a 0. It's binary, right?
Yep.
So 2 sides of a coin. So if this side of the coin is blame, this side of the coin is taking responsibility.
Yep.
So I just refused to blame.
Yep.
And I found it was very difficult to do. But I trained myself not to blame anyone or anything for my lack of success or happiness at all, because the blame's just a dead end road, right?
Yes.
It's like some people, it's another example of a dead end road is some people typically want to make more money and do less work.
Yeah.
And if you continue down that road, you get all the money, you do nothing. Well, that's not going to work. So why not do the maximum in order to be able to get the maximum, to be fairly paid for what you do, the value you bring to the world? Okay, fine. So just that one little shift. Now I didn't think about it as eloquently as you did with these 3 different buckets of surrendering these things and reprogramming my mind in these things. I just said, I'm not going to blame.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucked. Now, I would love to tell you that I was really good at it, but when really big stuff happened, one of the biggest journeys in my life was learning how to discipline my disappointment. In other people, in circumstance, in situation, in misfortune, in bad luck, and I love to tell
discipline your disappointment.
Yeah.
Can you unpack that? I love that. That is beautiful. I've never heard that expression, but it's
I don't
so
know where I
important.
heard it first time, but when you're immature in entrepreneurial land, you go have one bad presentation and you just get shot down.
Yep.
Just brutalized. And gravity feels like it's times 10, and you just get mushed to your desk and you get mushed under the ground, and you don't want to talk to anybody. You don't want to do anything. You go crawl under the covers and, I'll see you in 3 days. And, you're still thinking about it a week later. You're telling people about it, becomes part of your story.
Yep.
You ever see somebody go through a divorce?
Oh, sure.
And 10 years later, it's still their story.
It's the first thing they want to talk about when they meet the new guy.
It's still their story.
Yeah.
It becomes part of their identity.
Yep.
So to discipline your disappointment is, instead of, let's say, in 24 days it takes you to recover from that disappointment, maybe it's 24 hours. Yeah. Then over time it's 24 minutes.
Yep. Beautiful.
Then it's 24 seconds.
Yep.
Like I had a really horrific one, really, really bad, worst of my life, which I'm grateful for.
Yeah, that's how you know the work is done.
For sure.
Right.
I had one of the worst betrayals I ever had in my life, early 2000s. And it cost me financially, reputationally, every which way. It was just terrible, awful. And it was a friend, and it was a stab in the back, and it came out of nowhere, and all kinds of terrible stuff. Right. And I'm sure I must have had a part to play in how that all happened. But through the situation, it was a fight for survival in the situation, and it became my entire identity. Every waking moment was either a battle, or survival. And anybody I came into contact with, I would tell them the beginning to end of that story and where I am today. And to get significance, to get sympathy, to have validation, to, whatever. But over time, that was a big one, biggest one of my life, probably one of the biggest ones of my life. I've had a few, all of us have.
Yep.
But I remember all of a sudden, there was a couple of days that went by, I didn't think about it. And then it was like a couple of weeks went by, I didn't think about it. And then, a couple of months went by, I didn't think about it. And then now the only time I think about it is out of gratitude.
Yeah. Or if it's a relevant teaching moment.
If it's a teaching moment. Yeah.
So why did it go away? Why did it fade? Because for some people it doesn't.
Time.
Well, sometimes we say that
time was a piece.
Yeah.
I realized, my awareness was, this story is not serving me.
Yes.
And it's not serving them.
Yes.
It's a selfish act. I need to man up.
Yep.
And move on. And I need to use the good from it and release the bad.
100%.
Right. So same thing, whether it's a divorce or whether it's you got fired and you're mad and you didn't think it was fair, or
So let's
whatever.
Let's talk about your story of betrayal.
Yeah.
Easy to focus on things you couldn't control, right? That wasn't in your control. You didn't ask for that. Somebody else made that decision. Your explanation is focusing on what you lost or what you don't have as a result of
Or
it.
how unfair it was.
How unfair it was. And you're 100% focused on the past, right? Past in that as time goes on, you're constantly going back to what has happened.
Or what when I was going through it, I was telling them about the present at the same time.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But it happened in a moment in time, right? So you get stuck there. Now you got yourself out of that. But how many people do we know that you run into this person, like you've talked to them for 5 minutes and they want to tell you their life story about this thing that happened to them 10 years ago and their whole identity is stuck there. To me, that is the definition of hell. You were literally living in it
brutal.
Over and over and
I
over
used it
again.
as fuel. I'm gonna show them and all that stuff. I used
Beautiful.
it. But you know what one of my interesting coping mechanisms was to be able to help me move forward is while this all happened. So I had basically loss of income completely. Had a half-built dream house. You know? I had my entire stock portfolio wiped out in 6 months, same time.
.com bust.
Combination of things.
Yeah.
Bad decisions on my part.
Understood.
And audited by IRS in the same 6 months, which did not end well because of some bad advice from accountants, which I should have
Understood.
checked.
Yep.
And all of a sudden I have no income and I have all these bills, right? So just the dealing with the bills consumed my entire life. Looking at them, taking the calls, angry creditors.
Yep.
You said the check was in the mail. You know, we're going to sue you. We're going to embarrass you to the world. All this stuff was happening all at the same time. All these different things. IRS calling. Everybody's calling. So I just decided I cannot move forward if I live this existence. Okay. Everybody told me to file bankruptcy. I didn't. And everybody got paid. But here's what I did. I said, okay, I can't deal with this every minute of every day. I want you to pile all the mail and take messages from every phone call, and I will deal with it 3 hours on a Monday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
Beautiful.
And in those 3 hours, I'm going to call every single creditor because they never get a call from me.
Yep.
I called the IRS. I called the state taxes, and I just said, hi, this is my name. Here's my social security number. I owe you money. I don't have any money right now, but I want you to know I'm intending to pay you. And you know, they hollered and screamed. We're going to do this, and you can do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. You're in complete control.
Yeah.
But how many people called you today? And they said, nobody. I said, I'm one, you know? So, and I'll call you next Monday and I'll give you an update. And in the meantime, I got to go to work to try and make some money. I've always been able to make money. I'm going to make some more.
It's beautiful.
Okay. Called all the credit card companies, called all the different people, talked to the attorneys that were involved in different things, you know, dealt with all of that stuff. And then once the 1 o'clock hit, ding, closed the folder,
Done.
and went to work.
Yep.
And I literally refused. I would not look at the mail and I would not take a phone call that was regarding that. And they hollered and they screamed for like 3 weeks. I mean, like the credit card people, they were like, we're going to come to your house. We're going to tell everybody, we're going to call I say, do whatever you want to do. You know, do whatever you want to do. There's nothing you can get here.
Yep.
There's nothing to get. So do whatever you're going to do, but I'm going to call you next week. And I call them, this week I got $150 and I'm sending it to you. And I know it's nothing in comparison to what I owe you, but I'm going to send it anyway. Okay. And after like the 4th week, they said, you don't have to call anymore.
What an incredible story.
But we're like friends.
Yeah.
You don't have to call anymore. Just, you know, send us what you can.
Yep.
Give us an update every once in a while.
Yep.
And we're going to put you in the hopeful pile.
Yep.
Because we're not going to put you in the deadbeat, we're pissed off at you file. So work my way out.
And that's an example of surrendering control, right? You surrendered. I can't do anything about what they're going to do.
Yeah.
All I can do is what I can do.
Right.
And I'm going to surrender.
And I wasn't going to hide from it.
Right. And
hiding from it gave me so much anxiety.
Right. You owned yourself. You owned your responsibility.
Yeah.
I love that. It's an incredible story. Thank you for sharing it.
I just want to jump in and quickly interrupt this podcast interview and give those of you involved in network marketing a very special message. And that message is this: if you want to grow your business, I can help. If you're just getting started, you don't have any recruits yet, you don't have much of a team, I can help you get to your first 10 recruits. If you got some recruiting going on, but you need more help with duplication, I can help you on your journey from part-time to full-time. And if you're a serious player, I can help you scale and grow your business. All you have to do is go to goproacademy.com, goproacademy.com. Wherever you are in your journey of network marketing, this program will help you get where you want to go much, much faster. I've helped millions of people learn how to recruit. I've helped tens of thousands of people get to six-figure a year income. And I've helped over 500 people get to a seven-figure annual income inside of this network marketing profession. I can help you too. Go to goproacademy.com, goproacademy.com. So anyway, so giving up the three things, then what's the next?
The second one could go one of two ways, but generally it's surrendering the illusion of specialness and or separation. So separation is this flavor that somehow we're special in our upness, right? Or that we're special in our
uniquely
talent. Yeah, we're uniquely up. Like you can't understand my story.
You don't understand how I am.
Yeah, you don't understand, right? And you see this a lot, right? This is, you don't know my story. You don't know what I've been through. Like, I don't need to. I know the human experience.
There's patterns.
Yeah, there's patterns, right? But we want to believe that somehow we're special in our upness or in our talent. Sometimes you get people think that they're a special kind of savior. But usually it's the other, right? Like, oh, you can't help me. This is, and so that's one of the illusions that has to be surrendered. And if you study history, you begin to realize, oh, there's a lot of patterns to human behavior.
Sure.
We're having a human experience, right? And like, we're having a human experience. I am not special in my suffering, but that's a hard one for people to surrender because very often our identity is tied to our specialness. We want to believe we're special, even if it's in our
special,
fucked-upness.
Messed up.
100%, which is why people want to share it. Let me tell you how special my fucked upness is, right? And so
we were talking about Louis C.K. before we came on, and how people tend to come back around. Louis C.K., the comedian who got in trouble for doing some inappropriate sexual things, and took two, 3 years off. But I remember his first thing coming back. He said, "So how was your year?" and then he said, well, now that you know what my thing is, I know you all have a thing. I don't know what your thing is, but everybody's got a thing, and everybody's like, yeah, you're right. Everybody pretty much has a thing.
Yep.
The surrendering that you're this unique flower that's either been damaged or treated in such a way that you deserve some special significance,
yes,
or sympathy or grace,
yes,
or
the irony is when you surrender it, you get to see how special you really are, right? Because you get to, it's a remembering of who you actually are. So it isn't, the message isn't that you aren't special. You are uniquely special, but who you truly are, the essence of who you are. You only get there when you're willing to release
the pattern.
All of
isn't
your
what
story.
Makes you special,
right? It's not the pattern.
The story, Tony Robbins would call it a pattern. The story that you're telling the world and yourself.
Yeah.
I can't get out of my head, or
100%.
Whatever.
And so we surrender that, and then kind of tied in there, and I kind of put them together, but potentially they could be separate. But the other part is the illusion of separateness, that I'm separate from the other. Right? We are still a very primitive species in that we believe that we are separate. Not the human does. The spirit knows that we aren't, right? And that's all the major religions have been saying that forever, including Christianity. We're not separate, but we act as if we're separate, right? And so surrendering the illusion of separateness is not seeing ourselves as separate, but seeing ourselves as one, that we are, that my experience, my human experience is not separate from the other's human experience. And that's a tough one for a lot of people. Sometimes that takes a while before they can get to that point.
Explain it more.
It goes back to specialness. I'm separate in my specialness. I'm separate in my suffering. So easy to surrender.
So I'm alone. I'm isolated.
Correct. And it's seeing that my surrendering the illusion of specialness helps you surrender the illusion of separateness, where I am somehow separate in my suffering. And that separateness comes very often by thinking I am special in my
you don't
suffering.
Understand me.
Right. And you begin to, and we are strongest in community. We're designed to be in community, right? And we know this from battle warfare to any kind of tactic. It's always to isolate and separate, right? We're strongest when we're together. And when we all remember that, it will change humanity. And you look at whether it's a sports team or a country, when we unite as one, we're unstoppable. And I'll reference Genesis here, Genesis 4. I thought it was really fascinating. The Tower of Babel. There's this discussion, whether it's an allegory or a historical account, you can debate it, but there's this discussion among God, and it is in the plural, we, and they're saying, what can't they do? They are united as one. And their goal was to build a tower to heaven. Well, how are they going to, we could physically explain that's not possible. How are you going to build, you got an atmosphere. But that wasn't the argument. That wasn't the contention. The contention was they're united. What can't they do? That's a really fascinating conversation. And so then that's the story of Babel, where they change their languages.
Yourself when you get two people together, what they can do.
Right. But a whole group of people united. So that's surrendering the illusion of separateness, where we stop seeing ourselves as separate from one another and we start treating the other the way we would treat ourselves, the golden rule. Or, as Christ said, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. Well, that's surrendering the illusion of separateness. And then with that is there is enough. The story of lack. There is enough. So that's another level of awakening, where you stop seeing your specialness as seeing yourself as special in your suffering and separate. And then the last one, generally, sometimes this gets reversed, but more often the last one to surrender is duality, this idea of right and wrong. And this is a tough one because right and wrong has served humanity for so long. And our whole framework is around right and wrong, that it is not one that's going to die easily. But this idea that everything is an opposite, right? Yeah. And it's a useful construct, which is why it dies last usually.
Sure.
Because it helps us navigate this world.
So this idea of us being one is beneficial to us.
Yes.
Our emotional selves.
Energetically, physically, and always.
Monetarily.
And we can backtest this when we feel like we are part of, when we are connected. Community. We're healthiest. So think of you've probably seen the memes, but it's true. When a baby, when twins were born and one of them wasn't doing very well, and the nurse knew to put the other baby in with the one that wasn't doing very well, and he put his hand over his chest, and his everything, his heart rate, his lung, everything stabilized. Right? It's this connection. We're designed to be in connection. And we're at odds. Look at all the conflict in the world is when we believe we're separate from the other. We have separate interests.
Yeah.
Right. And
separate genders, separate races,
separate everything. Beliefs. Right. And there's
a lot of money in polarization.
100%. And easy to control people. We're strongest when we're united. And that's a tough one. That's a tough.
And uniting a group scares
those who are not interested. Yeah. Anybody
polarized.
Who's interested in control. Yeah. Exactly.
Interesting.
So I'd pay attention. Going back to what I was saying before, anybody who's interested in having you focus on things you can't control, anybody who's focused on keeping you on things that you don't have, anybody who's interested in keeping you in the past or focused on the future, pay attention, because there is an agenda behind that. There's a reason why. Because if you constantly think you're not in control, if you constantly think about things you don't have, and you're constantly in the past and the future, you will outsource your power to someone else. You will vote someone in or give some of the power to be that answer. And we know through history, nobody's that answer. No. You're that answer.
No, it makes people mad every single election season. I make this post and and my wife says, why did you make this post? But here's the post essentially says this. I know my friends from both parties think it's literally going to be the end of the world if the opponent gets in. The world will stop spinning. It's going to be the end of democracy as we know it. It's going to be end of the American experiment. You don't understand. It's different this time. That's been true for my 59 years. Every single election.
And since Bill Clinton, I think every Democrat has been labeled the Antichrist.
Or a Republican. Either one. It doesn't matter. Both sides.
Humans are fascinating.
And I'm about as independent as you can get.
Yeah, me too.
I'm a capitalist, of course, so I have leanings in that direction. But I'm also,
until we have a better system. Me too.
Yeah, libertarians gotten tainted in its definitions, but centrist, very centrist.
Yep.
Right. I think most people are.
Yep. I agree.
They're trying not to have us be.
Yep.
But I just say, regardless of who's going to get into the White House, let me tell you who's going to be most responsible for your happiness and success in the next 4 years.
Yes.
It's you.
Yes. I love it.
And entrepreneurs adapt.
Yep.
If taxes are higher, they'll adapt.
Yep.
If they're lower, they'll adapt.
Yep.
If regulations are more, they'll adapt. If immigration increases or decreases, they'll adapt. I mean, that's all you can do is adapt to whatever's going to happen.
Yep.
Versus not my president. This is not my president.
Place your vote, surrender the illusion of control.
On.
Yeah, it kills me. Kills me. I grew up in a military family.
And people think,
that's really hard.
You don't understand. Blah, blah, blah. And I just say, you're all being played.
Yep.
You're all being played. And you're not listening to me. And it's okay. You don't have to listen to me. You know, there's people spending trillions of dollars to get you to listen to them.
Yep.
Fine. But let's just judge by consequences. How's that working out for you?
100%.
I'll tell you how things are working out for me.
Yep.
They're pretty good. They're pretty good. I mean,